Welcome to Pharma Drama, the channel where we look at the science of healthcare. Today we're going to discuss these guys, probiotics, and we'll answer probably the most fundamental question there is: what actually is a probiotic? So, if you're ready to find out, get yourself a drink. I recommend tea or coffee, but given we're talking about probiotics, kombucha also seems appropriate. Sit back, relax, and let's make a start. Right, let's get on with answering the main question. What is a probiotic? Handily, the World Health Organization has published a definition, so I don't need to make up my own. A probiotic is defined as a live microorganism that, when administered in adequate amounts, confers a health benefit to the host. Obviously, if you're the person that has eaten the probiotic, you become the host. Should you wish to read the full definition for yourself, I have added a link to the article below. Now, unless you are particularly technical, that definition might not mean much to you, and I think it needs some explaining, which is the point of this video. Let's start at the beginning with live microorganism. The live part is easy. The probiotic must be living. But what is a microorganism? Simply, and the clue is in the name, it's a small living creature. You probably will have heard of some of these, I'm sure, as they include bacteria, algae, protozoa and fungi. Most of the microorganisms that are accepted as probiotics, and that you will see listed on the packaging of probiotic supplements, are either bacteria or yeasts, yeast being a type of fungi. Does it surprise you that bacteria and yeast can be good for you if you eat them? Many people, I think, assume bacteria are bad and are only found in dirty places, such as public transport, TV remote controls, toilet bowls, and all those other places your mum told you not to lick when you were a child. Sometimes people use the word germ, Donald Trump, I'm looking at you, and hence become germaphobes. Now, it is true that some bacteria can indeed be bad for you. You might associate bacteria with nasty tummy upsets, E. coli or Clostridium difficile for instance, or you might have heard of MRSA, which is particularly difficult to treat. You probably wouldn't eat raw chicken or eggs because of the risk of salmonella poisoning. And it's true, some of these species of bacteria can cause problems if they grow in your gut. And we will talk about these bacteria and why they cause problems in later videos. When people think of yeasts, they often think of Candida, which causes parts of your body, particularly the more moist parts, to be red and itchy, or nail infections, or athlete's foot. When microorganisms cause us problems, we refer to them as pathogens. And of course, we don't want them in or on our bodies. So I can understand why you might think the idea of deliberately eating yeasts and bacteria to be a bit odd. But let me reassure you, many bacteria and yeasts are good for you. And when they grow inside our bodies, they make us healthier. We call these microorganisms symbiotics. Let me give you some examples where we use microorganisms for our benefit. Do you enjoy bread? Or maybe the odd beer? Well, neither of these could be made without the help of yeasts. Maybe you like yogurt or cheese or kimchi. Again, these could not be made without bacteria. In fact, bacteria and yeasts are all around us, and we couldn't live without them. You might be aware, for instance, there are bacteria and yeasts living in your gut, but have you a feeling for how many? Let me give you a moment to think about that. Got an answer? The answer is that there are trillions and trillions of bacteria in your gut. So many, in fact, that if you counted all the cells in your body, you would find only 10% of them are human cells. The remaining 90% are microorganisms. I should point out here that microorganisms are very small, much smaller than this fellow here. And they're much smaller than the cells that make up your body, which is why the proportion is so high. But nevertheless, you contain a lot of bacteria, and it would be very hard for you to survive without them. Again, spoiler alert, we will look at why that is in a later video. We call the mixture of microorganisms in your gut your microbiota. You might have heard of that term, and so now you know what it is, and everyone's microbiota is different. So your gut already contains a huge number of microorganisms, and when you eat something containing a probiotic, you are simply adding a few more to the mix. Why would, or indeed should, You eat probiotics, and what are they exactly? The first thing to say is that nearly all the probiotics that are found in foods and supplements belong to a particular group called lactic acid bacteria. The reason they are termed lactic acid bacteria is that when they eat and they grow, they produce lactic acid as a waste product. Remember that like all living creatures, probiotics have to eat to survive. After they have eaten, they produce waste, just like you and I do. It's just they produce a specific compound as waste, lactic acid. The fact that probiotics produce lactic acid is really important, and it's the reason they confer a health benefit to you. Before I explain why that is, I just want to say that the reason some bacteria cause tummy upsets, the pathogens I mentioned earlier, is that the waste compounds they produce are toxic to the body. There is really little difference between bacteria that are good for us and those that are bad for us. It all boils down to, for want of a better phrase, the type of poo they produce. Why is lactic acid good for you? After all, it's an acid, right? And that sounds bad. The answer is that your gut microbiota comprise many thousands of types of microorganisms. Most produce waste products that are useful to you, but some produce waste compounds that are harmful or toxic. So think of your microbiota as a balance, microorganisms that are good and some that are bad. To be in the best of health, you want the balance to be heavily in favour of the good, with little or no bad microorganisms. There is growing evidence to suggest that when you feel unwell, or indeed have a particular disease, that the balance of good to bad microorganisms in the microbiota has shifted too far to the bad. We have a special name for this, it's called dysbiosis. The reason lactic acid bacteria are so universally useful is that when you swallow them, they should arrive in your gut and then begin to grow. As they grow, they produce lactic acid as a waste product. Because it's an acid, as the concentration of lactic acid increases, the pH of your gut decreases. This is a little bit like how your stomach acid works. Generally, microorganisms that are not good for your health, those producing harmful or toxic waste, are not very good at surviving in low pH conditions. So as the probiotics grow, they make it harder for the bad microorganisms to survive. So far so good, but you might say to me, hang on a minute, if I swallow too many probiotics, would I not just acidify my gut? And that would be a very good question. And that's where Mother Nature steps in, as usual. Many of the good microorganisms in your gut actually eat lactic acid. In so doing, the good microorganisms grow more and in turn produce more waste compounds that are good for you. So the lactic acid does two things. It makes it harder for the bad microorganisms to grow, and it makes it easier for the good microorganisms to grow. In this way, probiotics are able to help restore the balance of your microbiota, away from dysbiosis and towards healthy. So that, in a nutshell, is what a probiotic is. It's a small microorganism, usually a bacteria or a yeast, that when swallowed produces useful waste products in your gut, helping restore a healthy balance to your microbiota. I hope you found that brief introduction useful. If you did, please hit the like button and please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. I will be posting lots more videos soon where we will look at all sorts of aspects of probiotics and how they influence health. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to discuss, please leave a comment below and I will try and answer your query. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching and I'll see you again soon.